Joint meeting between the Garfield Township Board and the Garfield Township Planning Commission. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Laney, can we have a Township Board roll, please?
Augustinelli.
Here.
Lapp.
Here.
McCumber.
Here.
McManus here. Schmuckel.
Here.
McManus.
Here. John, are you taking a roll for the Planning Commission, please?
Yes. Robertson,
Here.
Racine,
Here.
Yuli,
Here.
Augustinelli,
Here.
Castiglione,
Here.
Fudge is absent and excused. DeGood.
Here.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Planning Commission, for inviting us to crash your party tonight, your study session. This has become an annual joint meeting between the Town Board and the Planning Commission. I think it's historically been pretty constructive. I see a lot of good topics on the agenda tonight, so looking forward to a good meeting. Chris, I'll turn it over to you for a minute here. It looks like I'm sorry. We have to review the agenda. So we have an agenda in front of you. If there's not any issues, I'd entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Go back to that. Yeah, you're right.
Support.
Motion made and supported to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, public comment. We will open the meeting with public comment. We have public comment at the beginning and at the end of each meeting. We do not have any public discussion on any of our topics tonight. Those are just strictly discussion topics for the board. So we will open up public comment at this time. Anybody would like to make any comments to the boards, now be your first opportunity to do that. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Kevin Summers, 3785 Brook Drive. That's over in Pigtown, so Garfield Township. But since we only do before and after, I just wanted to take a moment to say, the salience of these data centers gives us a moment to kind of pause and not just regulate data centers writ large. It allows us to regulate energy use and ecological impacts for all commercial uses. And to me, that means capping energy use at a certain amount of kilowatt hours per square foot, setting water use standards, and that could mean no groundwater withdrawal or no water for cooling, mandating the use of waste heat if there is any, regulating life cycle carbon reporting or requiring life cycle carbon reporting, compelling commercial buildings to follow more rigorous standards, something like Living Building Challenge or WELL, something beyond a LEED, limiting peak electrical demand, and enforcing noise and light pollution ordinances. I know we have a problem with light pollution in Garfield Township, but noise especially. So I'm not making an ethical judgment of data centers, but it's a great opportunity because data centers give us insight into a lot of future potential energy uses that we're not regulating. So if we could regulate that across the board, it wouldn't be just specific to data centers. It would serve us in the long term. So thank you. I trust John. I know he's going to do a good job. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
How's it going, everyone? I don't know anybody here. I'm from Antrim County, so sorry for coming all this long way here. I'm Dr. Mitch Diston. Again, I live in Antrim County here. I am a potential nominee for the 104th District. Don't know if I have the stomach for politics, mostly because I've been getting way too involved in data centers here all around Michigan. So I'm the director of the New People Foundation, a new environmental nonprofit in this area. We kind of took on the data center issue as our primary topic right now. And so, yeah, we've been leading statewide efforts against data centers, mostly because we've been seeing what they've been doing to communities all across Michigan. So first off, let me commend you for talking about this, having the foresight to talk about this before they come in. So what I've been seeing with my friends in Saline, in Ypsilanti and Washtenaw County, the communities who didn't have a choice were the kind of the frontline communities who big tech saw that they could utilize, or that these were underutilized areas that they could come in and basically forced them to submit to have a data center. They all had zoning regulations that probably wouldn't allow data centers, but again, we're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar industry. They will find a way to bring a data center in regardless. So, yeah, just commend you for the foresight of having this conversation before they come knocking on your door. Again, this is a massive issue, so I don't pretend to understand local zoning regulations. I know that that's not my forte, but the science is my forte. I'm a biologist and ecologist by training, so I started looking into the literature, and let's say that most of the scientific papers that have been published on data centers were published within the last year. So we don't have a really good understanding of the long-term impacts of data centers over time. But I have to say the papers that we do have now are massively worrying. And so, yeah, this is the pamphlet kind of distills a lot of that science. I dropped one for everybody here, and if anybody who wants to pick one up, they're free right there. So, yeah, I just really want you to think about this. And again, I am working with people all over the state on this, and it's not commonsensical. Sometimes if you have something in your ordinance that says we don't allow data centers, sometimes that actually invites the developers in quicker. So my email's on there, and I can put you in contact with the people who know more than me, at least on the zoning regulation board. And we have millions of resources for you guys to read too. And I don't want to read all of them because most of them are like hundreds of pages, and I don't understand a word of what they're talking about. But yeah, I guess just brief summation of what's going on across Michigan. Of course, statewide, Governor Whitmer signed a tax exemption for data centers.
We have a 3-minute limit on public comment, so
Yep.
we're going to enforce that this evening. So there's three.
Sounds good. Let me just direct you to the Rolling Stone article here. So the title is "The Precedent is Flint: How Oregon's Data Center Boom is Supercharging a Water Crisis." So just take a look at that article if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Sarah Cashel. I live in Traverse City off of Wellington Street, and I also have a house on Cedar Run. I would echo his thanks for the foresight to have this conversation. I think it's a really important one. Requiring special land permits for data center isn't anti-growth, it's pro-community. Data centers are not small, low-impact projects. They are energy-intensive, water-intensive, infrastructure-heavy, facilities with long-term consequences for land use, noise, traffic, and our power grid. Decisions of that scale should never happen quietly through administrative review. Requiring special land use permit does not stop development. It ensures transparency, public input, and clear standards, which I know you all respect. It gives this community the right to understand what is being proposed and how it affects our natural resources and whether it aligns with our master plan before it is approved. Most of your constituents that live here, including me, love this land. I live here for a reason. The forest, water, and open spaces, and the quality of life. That love is not abstract. That's why people invest here. They raise families here, and they build their business here. That it really is one of the key reasons. If a project truly fits, it would withstand public review. A special land use process is simply good governance, thoughtful, transparent, and protective of the place we call home. Growth without guardrails is short-sighted. Growth without guardrails is short-sighted. Smart growth grounded in public input, environmental responsibility is how we honor both progress and place. We all know Maya Angelou, I think most of us do. She says, if you know better, do better. I don't know if we know better yet. This gentleman before us showed us, and you can look yourselves, the data just isn't there yet. We have such an important part of the country here that you all are here to help us protect, and I believe that this guardrail is just something that we all deserve. So thank you again so much for the conversation.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Yee. I live in Traverse City. And first of all, I want to thank the gentleman for bringing the information. Thank you so much. I also have very serious concerns regarding the proposed data center. The following is from the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. Data centers are resource ravenous. Even a mid-sized data center consumes as much water as a small town, while larger ones require up to 5 million gallons of water every day, as much as a city of 50,000 people. However, the water isn't just used for cooling and then discharged as treatable wastewater. Much of it evaporates in the process. Even if they're using reclaimed or recycled water, that water is no longer going back into the base flow of the rivers and streams. Powering and cooling the server stacks also takes an astonishing amount of electricity. According to the International Energy Agency, a conventional data center draws as much electricity as 10,000 to 25,000 households. And shockingly, a newer AI-focused hyperscale data center can use as much power as 100,000 homes or more. While many communities see data centers as an economic boon due to tax revenue, the facilities themselves are not powerful long-term job engines. Most of the jobs they create are rooted in their construction, not their ongoing operation. There are also considerable risks to our civil liberties. The increased capacity for surveillance threatens privacy and democratic principles. AI data centers are recognized as the foundational infrastructure for mass citizen surveillance, acting as repositories for vast amounts of personal, behavioral, and in some cases, real-time video data. These facilities facilitate the AI-driven analysis of data from cameras, social media, and other sources to monitor, track, and profile individuals. Some of this is just redundant. So AI data centers are a significant threat to our environment, our privacy, and free speech, not to mention the increased burden of utility costs passed on to the consumer. We don't want this data center. We don't need this data center. And I urge the Planning Commission to do the right thing. Do not take on this Trojan horse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark Wilson. I'm at 3182 Silver Hills Lane here in Garfield Township. Again, I'd like to echo what the other speakers have said about thanking you for evaluating this before an application comes up. I think that's really important. These centers involve complicated issues that affect the health, quality of life, and expenses for township residents. So if an application comes forward, a thorough, transparent process will be necessary. So the rules will need to address many issues: a fully transparent approval process with no non-disclosure agreements that would hide information from residents, electricity supply, including the source, interconnection and transmission issues, volume of use and associated pollution, water use, including the source, amounts used, which are typically quite large, as some other people have said, discharge and associated pollution, noise, since they run 24/7, and its effect on neighbors, their effect on electricity and water customers in the township, such as costs and availability, and their funding. No waivers of any costs or fees should be granted, especially granted for these facilities. So I would support a moratorium on approving them until the commission can create rules addressing these issues. And I support a change of approval from use by right to requiring a special use permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I see no one else coming up for public comment. We will close public comment and move on. Chris, you have some.
We got one more. Thank you.
Ani Boujou, Tarajan is my government name. Thank you for making this available for public comment. Full disclosure, I'm not a voting member in Garfield Township, but I do have vested interest here. nieces, nephews, a lot of my business is here. That also being said, I am a water protector of the indigenous community, and that is where my investment lies here. That and as an eco-restoration specialist, I am very concerned with the effect of wildlife specifically. And I would like to see data produced by these people that are, or entities that would like to utilize the land as far as impact research. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have already closed public comment, so Chris, you have some minutes you need to have approved.
Sure. I'm just looking for a motion to, well, take a minute and review, but if we're satisfied that our minutes are in order, we can make a motion to approve the minutes from our February 11th, 2026 meeting.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from February 11th, 2026.
Now second.
All right. We have a motion by Robertson, support by Castiglione. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion passes. I think that's all the business we have, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. All right, moving on to the heart of the meeting this evening. New business come before the board. I appreciate staff and the planning commission putting together some topics and talking points moving forward. So at this point, I'll turn it over to John to start off with our first points.
Sure, thank you, Joe. So I think probably the process going through this evening is really, these are just points of discussion. There's no action this evening. This is an opportunity for conversation between the Planning Commission and board, but more importantly, I think it's going to be helpful for the Planning Department and the Planning Commission to hear from the board. And if you have if board has any thoughts on or any direction on some of these issues or topics that we're going to be discussed. Also, for the sake of time, these are just conversations, so if there is additional information or discussion that needs to take place on any of these, they can be deferred to a future meeting of the Planning Commission for as part of a study session, or the Planning Department can always bring back additional information to the Township Board. So this is just really an opportunity to kind of touch base on some of these issues. Kind of got down into 4 different sections, one on plans and planning, developments, land use issues, and then some other planning discussions that we put together. And I worked with Chris on some of these items here too, so that we can have some communication. In terms of the master plan, that's the implementation of that master plan. A key part of what we're doing is to develop some new mixed-use districts. So there have been, to date, just one of the mixed-use districts which was enacted just recently, that was approved by the Township Board to be included into the zoning ordinance, and that's the mixed-use neighborhood zoning district. There will be, anticipate at least 3 others. There will be a mixed-use suburban district, which is a little bit more intensive than the mixed-use neighborhood district. And then future a center district, which would go to areas like, say, the Grand Traverse Mall in that area, and then a mixed-use corridor district, which would be for the larger corridor areas, say like US 31 or potentially South Airport. The goal ultimately is to help to facilitate the implementation of the master plan, but also will be it helps us to kind of update our zoning districts, and there will be the ability to potentially retire some of these or merge them together, so it'll help to streamline the ordinance a little bit. But as we get along, going forward, this is kind of the concept that we have going right now. And I don't know if any of the planning commissioners had any thoughts on that.
You have the examples of where we're looking at that, or we haven't implemented it yet, correct?
Right, the mixed-use neighborhood district is going to be, the one area that we see it being applied right now is the Veterans Road corridor, right outside our Township Hall here. We actually have an application that just came in for one of the parcels that would be for that particular district. The mixed-use suburban, we see at least probably 3 different areas where that could be applied. That will allow some greater commercial activity into that mixed-use district, but it will prohibit any auto-intensive uses such as drive-through restaurants or car washes or that type of thing. And that I can see, at least initially, being applied in 3 different areas. One would be the new airport gateway area at Town Line and South Airport. Another one would be kind of the Logan's Landing area. And then another one would be Garfield Road, pretty much between South Airport down towards Hammond. And so that would provide a little bit more intensive uses on that, in that mixed-use type of district. Going forward, we did receive a proposal recently for the, basically referring it to as the Boardman Lake Loop Master Plan. And so this was a proposal that was presented to our department along with the City of Traverse City. And the idea is to build on the loop trail from a land use standpoint, looking at the land uses along that trail as well as potential connections. Hasn't been fully defined, but I would be curious to know, what the board's interested in, something of that nature along with the Planning Commission. But it would be a joint effort between the township and the City of Traverse City to kind of look at that trail and, knowing that it's getting a lot more activity because of its connection, to see how we might look at land use along that trail. Again, looking at connections to development that are around there. That's kind of it in a nutshell, but I just kind of wanted to get some thoughts and ideas about that, or questions.
Do you have any questions on the board with loop trail? Any thoughts?
I have a question. Are you talking land use around the trail? Isn't most of it already developed around the trail?
It is, but we're also seeing some development and redevelopment. Like, for instance, we had over the Oak Hollow, which is the street right behind the old art band store, like that has just been, that was approved for apartments or condos going in there. We did get a new development that was approved over on Wysong for some condos. We have the sale of the NMC campus to the Grand Traverse Band, to seeing how, what might transpire there. So most of it is kind of in place from a plan standpoint, but it would allow us to at least reevaluate that. I think it's at least something to maybe consider, maybe vet out a little bit more and then bring it back. But I guess one of the things that at least that we're concerned about right now is just our workload. And in terms of what we could take on for a new planning process like that, and I know that might be a concern of the city as well. So it'd be something that maybe have to be thought out and could maybe be done at some point in the future months.
One comment on that. It would be nice if there were a connector from the Boardman Loop Trail to the trail system behind the old YMCA, something crossing Airport Road. Because presently, it's tough to get across Airport on anything other than a car.
Yeah, I would agree. We have a group that we've actually met once. It was included the road commission and some of the stakeholders along there, like TART, and figuring out how to make that connection. I kind of feel like that is probably our most pressing issue right now. We do know that there's interest in redeveloping both the east side and the west side of Logan's Landing, so we also have that to factor in. And it seems like I'd like to kind of figure out that a little bit more right now. I think it's a little bit more pressing. also because it's important to figure out that crossing and any changes or improvements needed of the river crossing by South Airport Road, to also figure out how we can work towards the planning of the South Airport corridor. I feel like if we don't figure this part out first, it's going to come back to us eventually, and I think that's a little tricky. There's a lot of, you got the, obviously the river there, we have non-motorized interest in going north-south, we have, at some point, there's that crossing of the county road has to be improved or altered in some fashion, and it's trying to figure it all out together, along with the development interest for the private land holdings.
Molly?
Are you looking at the city of Traverse City and Garfield Township working jointly on this? So in other words, is the city going to come down and talk to us about how we might want to cross South Airport Road? How are you, what are you envisioning for that kind of?
Well, it's something that quite honestly wasn't on our radar screen. It was something that was proposed. It's been proposed to the, department. I'm just kind of relaying it. So I don't really know. That's a good question. Like, how would it actually work? But the idea was both that the township and the city would work collaboratively to, have some type of plan. That's about it right now. I mean, I think in concept it makes sense because of the improvements that have been made to the trail and the activity. To what extent that plan would involve, I'm not quite sure yet.
Yeah.
Just a little more. We're not all talking a lot yet, so.
It's early.
It is early. Originally, when that loop was going around, there were some connectors down to Cass Road and kind of, down to farther down Cass Road and different things like that. Are we reinitiating some of those proposals? Are we going to be thinking about those that, like Lori was asking about, some connectors across the road, but these would be bike paths that would connect to, we're already going to be able to be connected up to Barlow and, other places in other plans that we have. So are we going to bring all those things together?
I think those could be included. I know we've had some informal discussions about, some of those connections. The township had the trail along South Airport on the north side of South Airport that connected over to Barlow and then up Barlow a little bit. And that kind of feeds back into the Boardman Lake Loop Trail. So some of those types of connections are worthwhile looking at. I think we would look at those regardless of the full, any type of a full plan around the Boardman Lake Loop. I think that's something that is already, we've been working on. The Parks and Rec Commission has been looking at trails and so forth, and we have our non-motorized plan in the master plan as well. So all of those different elements are already kind of in the mix, and it's just a matter of, kind of what bubbles to the top in terms of priorities and so forth.
Thanks.
John, I understood one thing, and then the discussion has led me to understand something else. Was what was proposed a trail planning exercise, more like a rec plan, or is it a like a neighborhood plan for the land uses directly adjacent to the trail around the lake?
I would say it's both.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of building on the success of that trail and trying to, because I know that within the city, they've had some, changing some uses there. They have some developments that are proposed kind of over on the Woodmere side. They've had some single-family homes going in over on the west side. So I think it's just trying to look at both the land use as well as kind of the non-motorized connectivity through that whole area.
Okay. My thought is it's not necessarily something we need to be a rush to jump into. There doesn't seem to be any, there's potentially some redevelopment opportunities, but certainly something that would be nice to coordinate with the city to the extent that we can. And I like the idea of that trail being the trail defining a community or a neighborhood that is shared between the city and the township. Now, how that, comes to fruition, I don't know, but it seems like a good idea somewhere down the road.
I don't think it has to be anything real sophisticated. I mean, I would not want another like sub-area plan. If it would be maybe some recommendations on how to tweak our master plan or zoning for that area might be better served. It's something that's a little bit more nimble and embeds itself right into our current plans and current ordinance.
And I guess I would add too, I certainly, some of the improvements that some of the trustees have talked about, I definitely agree with, but also would love to see portions of the trail, particularly the gravel portion on the east side, upgraded to asphalt like the rest of the trail. So, working together to say, hey, we should do this, and maybe pursuing it would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy for us to understand what's happening in Garfield, but I would have no clue on what's happening in the city, the adjoining properties and what might be proposed. Another point you may want to, do we need to include the county at all? It runs through Medalley Park, correct? So, I mean, it's a very small portion of the trail, but it is run through the county park there at Medalley. So, and I know they actually have a vendor on site there that rents kayaks and canoes and things. So that's probably the closest thing to a commercial operation right next to the trail. I don't know that it affects the trail much, but may want to include them in some sort of conversation. Of course, I don't know who you'd even talk to at the county, from a planning standpoint. But yeah, John?
I know sometimes when we're looking at reviewing our master plan, or if we're on the receiving end of a notice that a nearby jurisdiction is amending their master plan, we sometimes look at what's going on the borders, because it would be kind of nice if our plan and the neighbors' plans don't horribly conflict with each other. It doesn't sound to me like we're necessarily looking to do another sub-area plan or even any tweaking of the master plan yet. But sometimes we have joint meetings with another municipality's planning commission. We haven't done one for a while, but we used to do them every year or two with some neighboring township. I suppose, John, maybe one thing we could at least float the idea of somewhere, and maybe in the next X number of months or a year, a joint meeting with the city's planning commission and just brainstorm, because they obviously don't really have anything to say about what we do legally and vice versa, but maybe it'd be nice to know if they've got something in mind for some spot that it might be good for us to know that, and it might be good for them to know what we're thinking.
Good idea.
I just had one further question. There's that housing development that's on the southeast corner of the lake. What is the status of that right now, and could this, does it interrupt their status? Does it?
So that's the one on Oak Hollow,
Yeah.
behind the furniture building. Yeah, that is going forward, from our understanding. I mean, we haven't seen, I don't know if they've pulled building permits yet, but that was built into an area that was originally planned for office buildings, and so it fits right in there. There's some, actually, they're going to be incorporating some connections from the trail. They're not disrupting the trail at all. They'll keep some of the buffer there, but actually will connect from the Boardman Lake Loop Trail up Oak Hollow Drive there. So they will actually kind of allow for access for their development, but then the development that's behind them as well, kind of up towards Park.
The sale to the Grand Traverse Band, that doesn't affect the trail or anyway. That's the easements and the trail itself is set, but without any. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about the trail? I think it's all good conversation, and I think you got a good plan, John. Just keep working on that.
The next part, we just wanted to do some updates on a couple of the developments. I know everybody's always interested in the Grand Traverse Mall and what's going on there. This is a site plan. It's an excerpt of the plan for the former Macy's, which is intended to be subdivided into multiple spaces for leasing for retailers. So I think it's important to understand that a mall is not just under single ownership. There's several parcels there, several different owners. For instance, Macy's, at the time that they were operating there, owned that portion of the mall as well as the land around it. Same thing with the Target. Target owns that building. The parking lot around it, JCPenney, the same thing. There's an outlet there where there's a Starbucks and so forth. And then there's another actual mall owner. The mall was sold last fall from Brookfield to the new owners, Namdar. And so malls are kind of complex, particularly when ownership changes. And certainly the current owner here for the Macy's is looking to really kind of alter the form slightly in that as opposed to a strictly enclosed mall. This will be a portion that will be more of like a what we would call a strip center. So these are spaces that will be accessed from the exterior, and they will be improving the exterior, the parking lot, and so forth. And then they'll have those individual retail spaces. So I guess our challenge is, as we know, that retail is changing in every community. It's a matter, this is similar to the Cherryland Center. It's not easy to kind of manage these properties going forward when you don't have that kind of strong partnership that you once did when you had the traditional mall owner along with the significant anchors. So we're just going to keep continuing to do our best. There are issues that we have to figure out in terms of ensuring that there's access. There's challenges over signage. Everybody wants their own freestanding sign. There's utilities. In some cases, particularly in this particular site, there's a lot of private utilities in terms of the water and sewer. So when these changes happen, it's important for us to kind of look at these and while they are on the surface all looking like they're one cohesive development, there's really a lot of different parts to this, and trying to balance these going forward is going to be somewhat of a challenge. We do know that there'll be interest in this particular area to also look at doing some additional outlots as well.
John, I'm assuming a strip center is what are the words I'm looking for? Strip center is allowed in this parcel.
Yeah. It's similar to the Cherryland Center, which used to be the Cherryland Mall. It was an enclosed mall. It had a conversion in the late 90s to a strip center. I think it's important to understand that there's only so much that we can do from a zoning standpoint. There are agreements between the property owners that have agreements on shared parking, access through the buildings and so forth. And that's a private agreement that the township is not party to or has any control over. But yes, we don't really get into, there's nothing in our ordinance that says it has to be a certain building type. It doesn't talk about, well, it's got to have a connection to the interior mall or not. It really just envisioned, at least initially, that there was a single manager of the property.
The recent experience with Cherryland Center actually helps us, I think, in this regard, in that they're both in the CP zoning district. Perhaps someday this morphs into a mixed-use center district, but when all those were converting over, they were all reviewed, site plans were reviewed at the Planning Commission, and they still had to adhere to, even though it looked a lot different than a traditional mall, still had to adhere to some of those design principles in the CP district. All those outlots were created, no new curb cuts on South Airport Road or Garfield Road were created, and the same would happen if new outlots happen at the mall. There'd be no new curb cuts to South Airport Road. That they all have to share the parking, share the signage, would help manage excess signage in that area. So we can still use the zoning that's there. The other thing we did for Cherryland Center was had them do a comprehensive development plan when they started changing the actual footprint of the mall. And if this one gets to that point, that's certainly something that can be applied here as well, and sort of creates a forum for all the owners to work together, even if they haven't up to that point.
Any comments? I mean, it's exciting to see a potential redevelopment there. I'd rather see 5 businesses in that building than a vacant building sitting there like we have too much of now. A quick question, John, now, and I'm going back to my planning commission days here. So if that turns from 1 building into 5, will each of those 5 be allowed an exterior wall sign identifying their location?
Yeah, they will at the door.
At the door?
Yeah,
Okay.
so they.
It would make sense. You know.
One thing they won't, they're limited to is the freestanding signs. So, but it's interesting because I know we get a lot of pressure for, businesses that want to have a freestanding sign. But if you look along that South Airport corridor, Walmart, Home Depot, all of those do not have a freestanding sign, yet people are able to find those stores. So in this particular location along there, obviously has high visibility. You see it when you're going down South Airport Road. So I think having it the way it is right now, I think we can, kind of hold the line on that. I think in our ordinance, the way it's structured does allow for the wall sign at the door, but nothing that's kind of freestanding other than what's already permitted or constructed on site.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about Chairland? Or Grand Traverse, I should say?
Yeah, I have one. What kind of outlots, outbuildings, perimeter buildings are allowed? And have you had any, has the owner given you any direction on where those would want to go?
Yeah, we anticipate those will be similar to when J.C. Penney building is there in the parking lot, and then there was an outlot that was done there several years ago for where the Starbucks is located. It will most likely be on the ring road along that area. The parking standards for the mall are a lot different now than they were in 1992 when the mall was being built. So there's some flexibility there, but they still require to go through. They'll be dealt with as a separate site plan review. It's similar. We've done those in the case of the Chairland Mall. For like when the Wendy's went in, that was a new outlot that was created. The 4-plex building right north of there where there's the other Starbucks. So those were dealt with as individual site plans. The one benefit that we see is that some of those have the potential to complement the other commercial that's on the site. And that's plus it's providing infill development where we have the space available.
And I think for this one, they showed a rendering or showed a site plan that had an outlot in the curve, although the applicants who did the redevelopment of the Macy's building itself weren't involved in that. So they indicated that would be coming in the future from someone else, and we're sort of awaiting that application to come. We've seen kind of sketches, but nothing fully kind of engineered. One challenge there is actually the location of utilities. Since it's the edge of a parking lot, it was not anticipated for some of the utilities to get to that spot specifically. So it might take some getting through, but we're anticipating an application at some point for an outlot here.
Yeah.
Just a comment on outlot. It doesn't mean that you can just put a building there. They'll still come back to the planning commission and we'll talk to them about their parking, their landscaping, their curbing, all of those other things. And it would be each of those units. So it'll be like a different entity, but its own owner and its own use at that time. But it'll all have to fit into the uses that are allowed in the current zoning.
John, can you remind me, when did we approve the Macy's redevelopment? And then actually, what progress have you seen since then?
It was approved in August of last year, so we didn't hear anything up until recently. So within this new year, they are now, they're going forward with the white boxing of the interior and altering and all that, and prepping it for the different retail units that will be in there.
Great, good to hear.
Did they just start permitting?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just started permitting.
On that same line, I think since we approved that outlot change, there's 3 went at Cherryland, right?
So there was the
Wendy's, the
fourplex at a Starbucks is one.
and the second coffee shop, I think.
Yeah,
is
next
what-
to each other.
Which replaced, what was that, the bank?
Well, one replaced the bank, but
Yeah,
then
sure.
The Big B was the other one. that
Bigby was the other one, so there was 3 went at Cherryland, and then the Starbucks and mobile
Yep.
or phone place. Do we set a limit on how many could go in there? Is there a,
That's why in the case of Cherryland, we required a comprehensive site plan because it is
Right.
a balance, because there is all the shared parking in there.
right?
There's a certain, and people say, well, it's vacant parking lots I should be able to build. We've had, inquiries for hotels and apartments and all that stuff, but we're trying to maintain that balance based on the uses, because it could tip one way or the other. So while we do allow for that infill, we're trying to use that comprehensive site plan for the entire site so that it's done
Right.
in some coordination.
But they seem to be, the ones that have gone in have seemed to work pretty well. I haven't heard a lot of complaints or it hasn't affected a lot of traffic patterns and things. I think we all remember every one of them wanted more signage than we were allowing. But to John's point, they seem to find them just fine,
Because you have 3 coffee shops, so they're all
Yeah,
fighting.
yeah, there must be a lot of money in mobile coffee, because there's you can't go very far without hitting one, so, all right. Any other comments or questions about Grand Traverse Mall development? Yeah.
Our next one, I think everybody is generally familiar with, is I just wanted to kind of give you an update on the Olson Foundation development, which is at the northwest corner of Rennie School Road and US 31, roughly about 170 acres. That was subdivided and then rezoned, and then it's going through a lot of engineering review right now. I know that Jennifer is very busy with the
Kudos to
applicants,
Jennifer for
engineers
reviewing
regarding the water sewer extensions for that area, also having to deal with planned stormwater. But we did receive application at if we look at that development, you look at that site plan up on the screen, it's that parcel B, which is in the kind of the lower left-hand corner. That is an application for industrial development, which will be a facility, which will be the new home for Cherryland Electric Cooperative. So we've received that site plan. Because it's zoned IG, it is technically a use permitted by right. It's essentially like a large-scale contractor's establishment. But the planning department, which would typically do that review, does have the ability to refer these plans to the planning commission. So we are going to refer that to the planning commission. So we expect an introduction probably here in March. But we have been working with the engineers and the applicant on meeting the zoning requirement, and for the most part, they're able to meet all of our requirements. But this is the first development that would go into this location.
And now that we have our water again, this project sat still for a while because we weren't able to get water. So now that we've got those issues worked out, we're moving forward more quickly on this project. So I know the Cherryland's eager to move and get in their location.
And it's a little complicated because it's at the farthest point away from where the water and sewer service is, kind of over on the other side on 31 and to the north. So I think that's part of the challenges to accommodate this development, but then the phasing aspect of it is the real challenge And so I know that from the engineering standpoint, I know that's a big, not an easy approach to, it has to be very well thought out.
Did the road commission officially vote on taking that over eventually? I'm not sure if they have or not. I know verbally we've gotten commitment they were.
They approved the road commission, the board approved the road commission staff to work with the developer and come up with a potential maintenance agreement.
Okay.
So all those details are being worked out, nothing formally in place right now.
Yeah. Well, we've made it clear we want them to take that over. It's a very important connector, and we think we can convince them it's the right thing for them to do. So, any other questions on this one? All right.
Next, we got a couple of land use issues. These are things that being discussed by the Planning Commission. As you know, typically every year the Planning Commission goes through and makes some tweaks to the zoning ordinance. It's kind of an endless process. The zoning ordinance itself was adopted in 2015. It replaced the previous ordinance. It's for the most part, it's a very good ordinance, but as things change, uses change and so forth, it needs to needs to be tweaked. And so there's usually some really good discussion by the Planning Commission, kind of vetting out different ideas. And we just want to kind of just run a couple of these by the town board. Particularly one is let me see if I got these, is mobile food vending units, i.e. food trucks. The reasons we use that term, it's the term that's used a lot through the state of Michigan, and the city of Traverse City uses it. But we did have a business owner in Garfield Township approach the Planning Commission last fall for a conceptual review of the idea of allowing a food truck as essentially like an accessory use. So this isn't, when we're talking about mobile food vending units, we're not talking about ones that are just kind of circulating the township, but ones that would be applied in a couple of different ways. One is that they would be an accessory to an established business. So this would be an instance where there would be a need to provide some food service that they don't want to do through a formalized kitchen. So this was in the case of the brewery coffee shop that went in on Cass. They were interested in having some type of food service, but they didn't want to go through the business of finding somebody to fill their kitchen space or hiring staff to fill a kitchen. So they wanted to have a food truck that would be parked immediately adjacent to the business, so that people that are frequenting the brewery and the coffee shop could access that food service there. So I've seen this a couple of different locations around town outside of the township. For instance, on Silver Spruce Brewery, which is on 8th Street, has kind of a situation where they have a food truck or a food trailer right outside their business. And so that's one of the ways that potentially could be done as a zoning ordinance amendment. And again, it would be an accessory use to established business. So there would be certain criteria that they would have to meet. It'd be limiting the number, you'd have to have a dedicated space and so forth. The other idea is that in doing so, to complement that would be also to look at doing a licensing ordinance. And so when we had some conversation with the Planning Commission, kind of opened it up a little bit. We thought the licensing would make sense for these units because they're not permanent in nature, so they're temporary. So this would be, zoning is not a very good way of dealing with temporary situations. So if you had an issue, the best way to do that would be through the licensing process to ensure that they meet certain requirements, but also if there are any problems or issues with it, it can all be dealt with through that licensing system. So if there was something, if the township wanted to pursue this, would be to look at it from a zoning ordinance standpoint to allow the use, but then also a licensing ordinance that would complement that, food truck would also have to get a license, an annual license, that would have to meet certain criteria. in having that conversation with the planning commission, there was also the idea of, well, what if somebody wanted to use these at a temporary event, for instance, let's say a grand opening of a business, or it was also discussed like if there was an event at a park, let's say like T-Bays or something like that, would allow for a food truck. That was something that we weren't really anticipating, but that could be something that you could do through a temporary event license that would allow for that. So it's a lot to take on, but that's kind of at least what the planning commission was talking about. We also did have a conversation at the Parks and Rec regarding that as well. So I'd be kind of curious what the board's thoughts on some of this.
Any comments? Go ahead.
Just one quick question. Would it be limited to food?
As opposed to,
I don't know. You could rent a bicycle in the parking lot.
we were strictly looking at these as food vending, so selling of food similar to what we typically think of.
Who regulates the food trucks? Do they inspect them by the
State of
health
Michigan,
department? Or?
State of Michigan has a licensing part of it, but it would also be through the county health department.
And Metro Fire, I think, also.
Yeah, Metro Fire also said that if the township does pursue this, that they would want annual inspections of these for fire prevention and safety.
Go ahead, Mom.
There was some discussion at the planning commission about if you have a baseball game, for example, at Silver Lake Park, could you bring in a food truck there and do that? I'd be interested as a member of the planning commission also. How does the board feel about that? We have, in the past, not allowed food trucks. So are we changing that idea, or, how do people feel about that? It's a
Would it be
service.
two separate? That's what I'm saying, because what John was talking about is they're gonna be actually associated with a business.
Yeah.
So you're looking at one of those, but then what you're looking for, like you're saying at Silver Lake, would that be a whole different entity then?
Yeah, that would be, we're kind of looking at two different things here.
Okay.
One would be for like that business, and that would be a combination of zoning and licensing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the events, like whether it's a, say, a baseball game at Silver Lake Park, that would be strictly a licensing situation because it'd be temporary on-site at that location.
Frankly, I like the idea. I've seen it work at other parks in the Grand Rapids area at events, and it's nice. I haven't seen that it's caused any problems. I think garbage is a problem. That's the only, but other than that, I think it's enhanced your event that you want to have at a particular park.
Your question?
Well, we would have to change our park rules, because right now there's no vending at all. There's no selling of anything in our parks right now. And where I think it would be really nice, it could also be cumbersome, because our parks are open to everyone. Even when there's a special event there, the parks are open to everyone, and the parking is limited. Where do they park? That could be a problem as well.
Yeah.
Certainly, all good points of discussion, for sure.
Yeah, parking is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak to at least what was discussed at the Parks Commission. All of the issues that you've mentioned were discussed. My takeaway was that we were interested in further discussion regarding a food truck associated with a permanent event. So if you were renting one of the pavilions for a family reunion, and you didn't want to bring in crock pots but wanted to bring in a food truck to feed everybody, you could tie it to, you could get a permit associated with the use of the facility, the township facility, and I think that would tie the garbage and the other issues with it. We did discuss, but didn't resolve concerns about parking, and the fact that you don't rent the entire park, you rent a portion of it. But I bring it all up just to say the Parks Commission was interested in discussing it further, and if it was, if we came to some conclusion, we'd be ready to make some recommendations to the trustees about how we thought this through and how we see it being implemented.
Well, and there's a third. There's the ones associated with a business. There's the one where you bring in for a day. And then there could be another one if you, for example, the rugby guys that are using Silver Lake Park, if they were using it continuously and every Saturday they had an event, could they have a food truck every Saturday for that event, or a baseball team or, whatever, Frisbee.
Yeah, a couple of things that came to mind as I was looking through that. I hadn't thought through the temporary and the parks and that type of thing, but, we've been, from a planning commission standpoint, historically, we've been very protective of our brick and mortar restaurants. Okay. And even during COVID, it brings up COVID, we made some real temporary changes because we allowed tents in the parking lots, people could eat outside the restaurants, just trying to help them sustain themselves during those tough times. On the flip side of that, I like the idea of the tied, somebody puts in a business and then ties, instead of an internal kitchen, they propose an external food truck. One question I would have is, what about an existing business that either wasn't allowed to have food interior in the past or didn't want it at the beginning but now does? Are we considering that option? I could think of one, I don't want to name it, but off the top of my head, where they came in years later and they wanted to add a kitchen, and then with the facilities in our PUD that we put in there didn't allow it. So that'll have to be considered. Now, as I mentioned, the protection of our brick and mortar restaurants, I also realize it's an opportunity as well, because I can think of at least two, food trucks that were operating in the area that ended up doing so well they went into brick and mortar buildings. So it ended up going the other way, where they were, they were a food truck, and then they did so well they needed a bigger building, and they moved into an adjoining building and a restaurant now. One's in Interlochen, not in Garfield Township, but so I see the opportunity there, and maybe that's a way to help those. So when I thought about the temporary brief, I hadn't thought that through. We've been to, like, the Barnes Park. You're involved. I don't know if you're involved with Barnes Park. You're not, probably, but they have big concerts up there, and they set up concessions. But it might be easier, instead of setting up a concession stand, and bringing a food truck for an event like that, because there's a lot of people for one day there. Now, you'd have to talk to Matt Cowell about whether he's interested in something like that, but that's an event where I could see where you're not going to be affecting anybody else, but you really are going to be catering to that crowd that's there. So great conversation. I think you got a lot of work ahead of you on that in this one, but I think it's got some potential.
That's a really good point, Joe, because the Barnes just invested a lot of money in a commercial kitchen.
Well, and that might be their plans. I'm not sure.
Upgrade for catering for events, and you wouldn't want to.
Right. I think that's more for weddings. I think is what they had. My internal weddings and things. I'm talking about they have concerts on the lawn. My son-in-law plays in them. He's a musician, and we've been up there for concerts on the lawn, and they're outside the facilities. That's what I was thinking, but you're right. So.
Yeah, we did, in part of our research, in looking at this, I think you're right, it sort of opened up a world of possibilities when we started talking about this. What about this aspect and that aspect? One was, I asked our own assessor and a few of the assessors in the area, because I think one of the concerns about effects on brick and mortar is that they pay property taxes, and how would they treat a food truck, and I think it was more either done as personal property, or there are getting a township license and getting all the licenses and inspections, there would be fees associated with that. So some of that was covered. It didn't seem to be a major concern from an assessing perspective. And you're right, some of these have been turned into brick and mortar businesses. The other one took my tongue, I just had it, but was kind of looking at the like, do brick and mortar businesses, like, we haven't heard any like specific pushback. Even the one who brought it to us, the coffee bar and the brewery, I believe, also still has a kitchen. They were still interested in also doing a food truck. So I think they somehow coexist in the spaces they exist, at least from what we've seen. So it seems like there's positive potential out there.
If you don't think they're popular, I'll put a plug in for Kingsley football. They put a Gibby's Fries truck at the Kingsley football games, and the line is, you got to wait the whole football game to get yourself some Gibby's Fries. So, anyway. Any other comments on this one?
I think the planning commission thought this was a bigger issue than just a zoning ordinance. For, I'm going to say, semi-permanent food trucks, that is the only area that the planning commission or zoning has control of. Zoning can't control temporary events where the Parks Commission and the town board comes in, and that's where we thought a little bit more coordination or one idea to implement food truck or mobile food vending units would be helpful.
Planning Commission reviews zoning ordinance amendments, but anything else like licensing would be a police power ordinance. I mean, if the board would like Planning Commission or staff or some combination to kind of weigh in on that and draft it, that's certainly possible. But ultimately, police power is typically just in the realm of the township board. So that was part of bringing this up tonight, was just sort of what's the direction you'd like staff and the Planning Commission to go on this if the board's interested.
Yeah, I guess I'll give my feedback.
Yeah.
Just because you're looking for feedback, I would support temporary licenses or having them with established businesses. I think food trucks are fun. They bring people together. I think it's exciting when there's a food truck. You're like, oh, there's food.
Some good food.
So I'm all about community, bringing people together. I think it enhances events, and so I'd be in support of either way, just making sure that if it's a temporary, that they're licensed, that they, have to go through a process and pay a fee for an event, but I don't see any problem with it. And then being ones that are more established with the business, I think that's a good idea, because then you have access to bathrooms, utilities, stuff like that, if it's a more permanent food truck. But yeah, I think they're great. So I would support it if it came to the board.
Certainly something to work with, I think.
You could look at it like two different parts. I mean, I
Yeah.
think if we could look at it like as an accessory to an established business, we could deal with that way, which would be a combination of zoning and licensing ordinance. And then if you want to deal with parks is a whole nother issue, you can kind of deal with that separately. And it might be good to maybe just do a test run, kind of start with it as an accessory to an established business, see how that works, and if we have success and the licensing works and everything like that, then you can look at expanding it beyond that.
That's a great idea.
Does T-Bays soccer, I mean, nobody brings bigger crowds of people in for weekends than T-Bays. Do they do something now with T-Bays, or they just do internal? I don't know.
There is a vending.
I'm not a soccer.
There is a vending booth, and then there's also usually ice cream trucks.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I mean, it'd be a perfect
What an ice cream
example
truck
of
counts
an
as, but
event that would probably.
There's always 2 ice cream trucks. The
Yeah.
kids always need ice cream after soccer, but they do also have like a food vending stand too.
Does T-Bays run that, or just?
Yeah, T-Bays runs the vending stand.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions on that one? Comments? Great conversation. So, okay.
The next item is data centers, and I know we've had a lot of interest from people regarding this particular issue, and it's just something at this point that we're studying. So we have not been approached by anybody. We haven't. The reason we've been looking at it is because right now in the ordinance, data centers are use permitted by right in our in both of our industrial districts, and that anticipate that was written quite some time ago, so it's something like, TCAPS has the Sabin Data Center there on Cass and Hartman. It's something of that nature is what that anticipated. So I realize, obviously this is something new. This is not unusual for us. We've dealt, 25 years ago, we had to deal with the arrival of cell towers and, wind turbines and those types of things. So it's another use that we see happening around the state. So we realized that it would be appropriate for us to just update our ordinance appropriately. It is, obviously, it's more than some of the other uses that we dealt with, in that people are have strong opinions on it, but we have to go with what's provided or permitted through the State Zoning Enabling Act and what we can do from a zoning standpoint. So there are a lot of things that zoning can do when it looks at developments and so forth, but there are a lot of things that we cannot do and that are out of the purview of the township. So we are looking at it from a land use standpoint in terms of what the state allows for us to do in terms of zoning. Our initial thought right now, we are just doing some education and informing ourselves about the issue. We've had some attending some webinars. We've had some conversation with utility companies and other communities. And our initial thought is to migrate the use over to a special use permit, which gives broader array of what the township could do about it. In terms of standards, we can look at all kinds of standards that would apply to it. We also would look at it in changing it strictly to probably at least our IL district, which is our limited industrial district. That's our most intensive district. The other one is our IG district, which is a general industrial, which tends to be more light industrial, that type of thing. But then we also, when you do a special use permit, you can attach specific standards to a specific use. But we thought we might broaden that a little bit more in looking at industrial use standards, not just applied to data centers, but to some of our more intensive industrial uses that we might see, that we might already have in the township or potentially in the future. So we can look at things like water, energy use, the potential impacts on neighboring properties such as sound, vibrations, light, look at air quality issues, site selection in terms of where they would be appropriately located. And then just as we looked at solar farms and wind turbines, we also wanted to talk about decommissioning, because we know that typically a lot of these have a certain lifespan and we don't know how long they'll be in our community if they were to arrive in our community. So things of decommissioning, what happens to that facility should it be become defunct or no longer used. So we would look at these from a broader standpoint, not just targeting data centers, but in general, those high intensive industrial uses, and then that we can apply some standards to them. And one of the challenges that we have is we're not data center experts. There's the planning commission, so what we tend to do on some uses where we don't have it, the expertise, that expertise will be retained at the cost of the applicant. So a lot of times we will have an applicant will come in and they'll have a development proposal, and they'll bring their consultant that will weigh in on things, let's say like traffic and traffic impact. Well, certainly there can be a natural bias to the benefit of that applicant. So we need to have that evaluated, and we will typically then do our own analysis of that, and it's usually at the cost of the applicant through an escrow account. So they'll provide the money up front, and then there will be a consultant retained by the township to basically look at their consultant's work, just so that we have a peer review. So it's kind of understanding that also helps us to maybe translate some of the information that they're providing to us, so that we can understand what truly some of the impacts are those uses. So that's our initial thought on how we would proceed. Like I said, we're still doing a lot of information gathering and just, getting ourselves up to speed on it. But I think looking at those standards in a broader term will also help us be more defensible when we're applying it to a broader array of uses and not just necessarily targeting out something like a data center.
Now, just to clear up, I had a couple comments that were made. We do not currently have any applications, or nobody's approached us on data centers in Garfield Township,
Haven't received a phone call, email, or...
period. I mean, there were some comments made about an actual applicant on file and acting on it. Just to be clear, nobody's approached us about a data center in Garfield Township, period. And thank you, staff, for being proactive. You put the word on paper and panic erupts, obviously. So it's on paper because we're looking at it. It's on paper because our staff's being proactive and trying to act on this and put something together before somebody comes forward and requests something that might be adverse to our liking. I can think of two that we've had, or at one point, the Sabin Data Center. It's Traverse City Area Public Schools has a data center in Garfield Township. Cass and Hartman Road. And Munson used to have a data center over at Traverse Field and Hammond. I don't know if it's still there or not. But Munson used to have a data center in the township at one point. They may have relocated it. So it's nothing new, but I think the scale and scope of what's being proposed now is just, with AI, is just off the charts from what anybody would have considered in the past. So anyway, not again a soapbox, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear. There's nothing pending. So, any other comments or questions? Yeah.
A couple of things. So I attended the webinar that staff did, and it was a fantastic crash course for those of us who really aren't familiar. So the long story short is that data centers generally use resources that are oversized for what would be typical for other uses. So that's kind of how my brain compiles all of it. What I think we're looking for, and it sounds like the community too is looking for, is guardrails, transparency on the process, and some kind of estimation and consideration of environmental and community impacts. So I think that moving to a special use permit does those things for us. I kind of came up with a data center wish list, and some of it John's already said, so it's nice that we kind of took away the same things from the webinar. But so adding data center definitions and categories to the zoning ordinance is important. Restricting by SUP to certain areas. Having a score sheet or some sort of bill of the estimated infrastructure usage and or sign off or input from utility providers on what the consumption will be. Decommissioning plan and timeline was another one. And then periodic compliance reviews. So once a data center would be built in the area, is up and running, making sure that there's compliance with the things like noise pollution, heat emission, water consumption, all of those things. And then lastly, I would say, this is kind of the personal or individual angle of it. So nothing in life is free, not even data, not even AI, right? So what drives demand for data centers is our usage of data. So I did a little research on AI and water use, and a normal quick AI conversation costs us half a bottle of water. Maybe not us, but somebody somewhere in some community. And it costs a bunch of electrons too, but I don't know how many. A lot, probably. So I would just encourage all of us to individually think about, as we're utilizing these resources, that there is an impact. And then in our roles within the township, thinking about the impacts to our community, were those costs to be transferred here locally? So those were kind of my takeaways and what got me thinking. Again, the webinar was fabulous. U of M has some information out there, and there's been some recent articles locally as well that kind of cover this. But the U of M, which I'm sure staff can share, is a really great resource and kind of gave us quickly the lowdown on the issue.
Following up a little bit on what Kara just said, I would commend to the board members for your information. Staff came up with an excellent article from the Zoning and Practice magazine of the American Planning Association. It came out last fall, and it was an attachment to our January 28th agenda packet. I think it's item 7A. So I know that's available to anybody online. So it's written in plain English. It's not written by experts for experts. But just looking at it, it's probably got 8 or 10 topics that it's like a good checklist, like, oh, we better think of that, or, oh, we better think of that. So it's really good food for thought. As I said, sort of like a checklist. And one other question I guess I had for staff, I like the idea that we probably need some expertise to help guide us. But as you mentioned, typically the expertise is basically paid for by the applicant. We don't have any applicants. So we're going to have to figure out what are we going to do to get some guidance to get us the expertise to help us get through this process when there's nobody out there that's going to be footing the bill that I'm aware of yet.
I think in that case, we're looking, from my understanding, there's roughly about 17 centers in Michigan at this point, either proposed or underway. So, we can evaluate those, and obviously some of those are probably at a scale that I don't expect to see in this part of the state, but nonetheless, we can learn from that as well as other communities from around the country in terms of kind of the best practices and what we should be including in that criteria.
Molly, a comment?
It's a little off that topic, but not really. Our legislature from time to time decides what's best for the townships. And so
That's a polite way of
think
putting
it's
it.
important that we pay attention to what's going on in Lansing. The marijuana issue was one that came up here, and then all of a sudden, the state said, well, you can't say no. There may be other issues that come along. They've tried to do some things with solar, other things, and this could be another one of those. You may not like it, but it's better for everybody, that kind of thing. So we need to watch Lansing.
Yeah. Gravel pits is another one. There's different ones they basically told us you can't say no to at the state level, or tried to. So I think, we can regulate where they go. And
short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals is probably the biggest one right now. Yeah, the state likes to get involved in local decisions if they can. So
I think one of the other interesting aspects of the data centers, and a number of people in public comments, and then people up here have alluded to the amount of some resources that they consume. And I can't claim to have a full understanding of, but I keep hearing massive amounts of resources, electricity and water. A typical development that would come into the Planning Commission seeking permission, we don't really look at the quantity of electricity they use. We just say, go to Chairland. If they say there's enough electricity for you, then we don't say whether you can or can't. We say now we do have some township regulation of the water usage, but some of the water is sourced from the city. And there's another one where if you can plug into a pipe and get the water that you need, the Planning Commission doesn't really look at that. It's just kind of a yes or no, and somebody else decides. So it'll be interesting as we look at the special use permit process, which does have some broad brush stroke health and wellness of the community. I can't quote directly from it off the top of my head, but it might be an appropriate place to construct the special use permit process for us to really consider, well, if they need to double the amount of electricity that's coming into our community in order to support the data center they want to build, is that really something that we want as a community? It would be a different thing to be looking at the Planning Commission level, looking at more of a resource coming in order to support a particular development. So I just want that to be something we look at and consider.
I think at least one of those standards says impacts on public, like schools, fire, police, and I think utilities is part of that list of things in there, which is the advantage of having it go to special use permit, and then part of any findings of fact, if we were to ever get an application, and when we do further applications, findings of fact looks at the special use standards, but also any supplemental standards that we would have for that specific use or that specific district if it came to that. So the more robust it can be made and the more kind of purpose statements put behind those, the higher bar it would have. That's a good point to bring up, talking to like the city about water, because one of the standard like language we have in a lot of approvals is that like any outside agencies do their reviews and approvals before any permits are issued. So that includes any engineering, stormwater reviews. It includes DPW, which would have any connections to water. It would include utilities, includes Metro Fire doing a review. So, for example, if DPW could also weigh in on like are we strained in water resources, or if the city can say we are limited in our capacity, that might add some weight to keeping that a high bar as well.
John, do you still have a question?
I guess I'm curious to know what staff's thought and also the board's thought. I heard somebody mention from the public during public comment about the word moratorium. It sounds like as of this minute, a data center is defined in the ordinance, and we envision something fairly small compared to what seems to be going on in various places. It may be allowed in the industrial area as of right now. It sounds like it's going to take us some time to figure out what ought to be, how these things get addressed. And if it's going to take some time, is there some reason that there ought to be any consideration to some kind of a moratorium so that we can take our time and do something and do it right before something slips in that maybe we'd regret got the chance to slip in before we had our act together?
That'd be a question for staff, and then if John thinks that's a good idea, you guys recommend it to the town board. You're our recommending board, so we'd take that under consideration for sure. It might be a good idea.
I guess it's going to be up to the board. I mean, from our standpoint, like I said, I have not had, typically when we have development approach us, there's usually some contact made, phone call, email, and at that point, usually things are fairly a ways out. They could be 6 months to a year out. So I don't have anything that really gives me cause as to why we would need it. I don't have any problem if the board decides to go through that process. If you feel more that it gives us more comfort and assurance and a buffer, that's fine. But I don't have anything that, as a planner, I can say, yes, we have reason to do it right now. So.
I guess along those same lines, John, because one of the things I have heard is that in some communities there are entrepreneurs who are applying for data centers speculatively, and then if they get that approval, they can sell that right to do a data center to somebody else, I think. So I understand the normal process, but because it is a use by right, somebody could speculatively, and we're being recorded, so hopefully no speculators are listening, but they could do so speculatively and come in under the wire before we make a change, right?
Yes, I suppose they could, but I wouldn't expect it, quite honestly. I mean,
And I wouldn't either, but I also kind of sometimes favor better safe than sorry, and if we gave ourselves, is there any harm? We don't have any applicants. Would it be just a simple process of the Planning Commission making a recommendation on a moratorium? I don't favor moratoriums, but I only favor this maybe because all it would take is an application for a use by right, correct?
Potentially, yes. I mean, I'd probably, if somebody came in tomorrow and put an application down for that, we'd probably proceed with that.
So I guess what my thought is, if you could put some thought to it and maybe bring a recommendation to the Planning Commission at our next meeting, for, if there is even a remote risk that somebody could just simply submit an application for a use by right, then it might warrant that we recommend a moratorium so that we can change the ordinance appropriately.
Do you agree, Molly?
Well, I think we need to keep in mind, we already have one. So we're not telling Traverse City Public Schools that they gotta close their data center.
No.
We may have two if Munson's got one, which
Well,
I'm not sure we do or
we would
not.
define them differently.
Yeah.
So I mean,
This is large scale.
yeah, we
You know,
We
we
have a lot
haven't
of-
done any of those definitions of what do we mean by that?
And that was
What's
one
a
of the
data
things that
center and what's not a data center, and
Or
So-
small, large, which was one of the things in the webinar to kind of distinguish between those. The other thing might be actually reviewing if there's any use that has been interpreted. Sometimes if there's something that doesn't fall into an immediate definition, we've gone with the closest as an interpretation. Is there anything in any of the industrial districts that we've used that because we had no other closer definition? Like if we were to consider different definitions down the line, or if taking any action would affect those as well. Regarding, Chris, you brought up, like, yeah, if anyone would come in with like a site plan application, they'd still have to go through like a full development application, even by right, would still go through staff reviewing that, and then it still has the same sort of, some of the same language, still needs to get review from any other agencies before they get permits. Like, there's a long way for any application, even administrative ones, before they start anything. I think that is a valid concern that someone could put in an application before a moratorium came in, but there's still the standards of the ordinance that they would have to follow, just like any other application.
there is in the case of the Cherryland project, you know, they have the ability to send that to the Planning Commission. Also in the IG and IL, there are already some set standards there that talks about impacts, that talks about things like noise and utility consumption and all that type of stuff. So it's a pretty broad statement that's applied to all industrial uses. So I think that would afford the Planning Commission some at least immediate ability to, you know, say how does that use impact these particular issues within the community. So I feel pretty comfortable with that right now, but I'm also fine with the moratorium. Probably would be, you know, somewhere like 6 months or something.
You know, you do raise a point, and I guess maybe just something in writing to the Planning Commission for us to consider and say, yeah, this is good. But you know, you did say that the Cherryland Electric, you said earlier, you have the option as staff to say, you know what, we want this to go up to the Planning Commission for review. And even if it's not a special use permit, Planning Commission's going to weigh in. Maybe perhaps just an indication to the Planning Commission that, you know what, if one of these showed up before we kind of get our new process in place, this is how we would very likely recommend it to go to the Planning Commission, even though it's a use by right. And there are enough, I'm hearing you say there are enough concerns in that review process where we could weigh in. And again, if you think that there's adequate review capacity to consider a data center application, even before we get a special use permit process in place, then maybe we don't need to go so far as a moratorium. I think it's worth some further discussion at the Planning Commission level.
We'll make an evaluation and we'll convey it to Joe and Chris, and
perfect.
The recommendation will go from there.
Thank you.
I think we should take it out of the realm of use by right and put it in special use as soon as we can do that. That gives us lots of protections and makes us be able to be a little more flexible on how we might deal with it. So.
And I think it's also really important to understand that zoning is always very kind of flexible and fluid from the standpoint that what you adopt is not what you're stuck with. So we make amendments to the zoning ordinance, and if we have to go back and revisit it and make another change for something that maybe we'd like to tweak it or whatever, the board always has that ability to do that. So you're not necessarily have one shot at putting it in place, but you can go back and revisit it.
All right. Any other comments? Well, I think you have some pretty good direction from us, John, so sounds good. What do we got next?
We got a couple of issues that are kind of like some just miscellaneous type stuff. And maybe Chris, if you wanted to talk about this next one regarding Red Drive Trailhead.
So we received some information recently that there may be some development at Northwest Ed at the Commons. And you can see the section of Red Drive would be to the south there. Our property line actually takes up Northwest Ed's western parking lot where they park.
Mhm.
And so that's township property. There's some thought about development to the south, or being discussed. And also I've heard some comments from parents from Greenspire School that they drop off their kids and it's not a great road or great area for them to do that. They turn around in Northwest Ed's parking lot. It just creates a lot of conflict. So when I had conversation with Northwest Ed, I thought, well, we need to really plan on what that area should look like in the future. We have an opportunity to discuss, do we improve the road? Do we discourage development in that area? What do we do? So the Barnes, talking with Matt Cowell, he has an interest in that area because when they have weddings and events, they typically park by Northwest Ed and they bus people up to the Barnes. So he has an interest in that area as well. Greenspire does. Minervini's may as well. But their interest, as you can see, it isn't really in the township and it doesn't really apply to the section that we're talking about. So I don't know what kind of comments they would have. But and also we hope that this summer our accessible trail will be built right adjacent to Northwest Ed. And that, Red Drive is going to be the welcome mat to a beautiful trail that the public will want to use. So how do we handle that area? To the south is a dirt road. If you've gone through there, it's a wetland area. The road is beat up pretty bad. It gobbles up cars and damages them. Do we want cars to go through there? Do we want it to be non-motorized? What are our thoughts? Because, staff and myself are going to be meeting with Northwest Ed and other stakeholders in the future to have like a discussion and a planning session, figure out what to do. So I'd just like to get or staff would like to get feedback from everybody on what you envision going forward, if anything.
Yeah, Wally.
I have an opinion on that one. Red Drive is in our township, but we don't do roads. So I'm not really in favor of putting a lot of money into Red Drive. Also, it's a problem for the Botanic Gardens because people drop their kids off there or come through the Commons, come down Red Drive and cut through the Botanic Garden area and continue on. So and they have that nice park area just to go south, right in there, kind of go to the east. That is a park area, and it's separated because Red Drive comes through there. And if there was a way to plan to make Red Drive have a turnaround that made sense, it would be a lot safer for everybody.
You're saying a turnaround heading north on Red Drive towards the...
I'm saying a turnaround where the not Greenspire, but used to be TVA
Yeah, that-
parking lot somehow there, or go into the field. I don't know how much they use that ball field that's on the south side of what used to be TVA, but somewhere you cut it off and have it come around so they could go in and out all through there and leave the barns and the Botanic Garden as more of the jewel that it is.
From what I understand, there was discussions about a drop-off turnaround on the north side of Northwest Ed in that parking lot. Creating a turnaround there and kind of resolving the conflict. But that was just conversation, in the past. So I'm thankful that we can all get together and come up with a good plan that we can all hopefully live with. That's what we want to accomplish. And also, you mentioned the field. That's part of the development plan. So I suggested, not being an engineer or builder, that they kind of come out of the box a little bit and maybe consider developing in their current parking lot and turning that field into parking, just being a little bit different than what they're thinking, and maybe collaborate with Matt Cowell and his staff, and maybe that's becomes a joint space for parking and whatnot for the barns and Northwest Ed.
So is the school thinking about doing more development?
Correct.
So that's going to add more traffic onto
It
Red
is, yeah, and
Drive.
it just kind of elevates the priority of trying to figure this out. And this could come as early within a year.
But they have access to Silver,
They do.
so they don't have to use Red Drive at all. That development could go Silver.
They could, but based on, and everything that they talked to me isn't public knowledge yet, so I don't want to talk about it in this meeting, but it seems like the plan could create a lot of traffic. And maybe Silver Drive isn't the best option, but.
It's better than coming through the Botanic Garden and the barns.
They're doing their due diligence where maybe at the end of the day, it isn't a good idea and they scrap it and do something different too, so that's a possibility.
But we should be clear that we, as a township, don't have roads. We don't develop them, we don't plow them, we don't do any of that.
Chris? Do the township owns the portion of Red Drive that's highlighted in blue?
That's correct.
And we own that parking lot?
Correct.
Molly, I completely understand what you're saying about we don't own, we don't maintain, we don't
Pay for.
pay for roads. I would look to define that as an access to our parking lot for our park facility, as opposed to it happens to have a connecting road on either end of it. And I do have concerns about it being a throughway, but I do think that it's an important access point for our residents to be able to park and utilize that park. And I guess I would be concerned about, I would want to see more study, I guess, because if I hear you right, you're suggesting that we eliminate the connecting portion that's the crappy portion of Red Drive that's dirt.
Well, I'm saying you could go to our new access into the acreage at the park.
Mhm.
We could come down as far as we want to come down, but we don't have to come down all the way to the Botanic Garden.
Chris, is that a public road or a private road?
It's private, it's owned by the township.
Okay, so township could essentially do whatever they want with that road. If township wants to cut off access at one end, we can.
You want to put up
We own.
barricades and make it not motorized, you could. My understanding is joint rec funds maintaining the dirt portion. I believe they have like Elmer's truck in rocks and stuff and smooth it out. So they've typically done that over the course of time.
And why is it the township's problem for Greenspire's drop-off? Why didn't Greenspire have a plan in place for their student drop-off?
It isn't our problem at the end of the day. I think our only concern is our park. Accessing our park, like Chris had said. That's something that we should be focusing on. And I think that if you feel like you need to improve access to that, whether it's improve the road, then I think you could collaborate in cost share potentially, if that was a direction that wanted to be taken. But it really isn't our problem to solve traffic congestion in there.
So, Chris, you're suggesting that even there's an opportunity with the redevelopment that Northwest Ed's proposing, that we might be able to ask them to make some of these improvements, which would benefit us and simultaneously benefit them, recognizing, Molly, that that may create something that is a park/road that we might have some responsibility for maintaining, but maybe that's part of the negotiation.
I see it as, you know, if everybody worked together and cost shared, everybody could benefit, depending on what it turned out to be in the end. And again, this is all just talk.
Isn't that really wetland, and that's the reason the road continues to deteriorate?
It really is, yes.
So it's, I mean,
That Cole joked about putting a bridge over it, you know, it would need a bridge.
well, something, because it's all wetland, and they've repaired it, and it just, because it's wetland, it just continues to deteriorate.
And that's why there's been a lot of talk about making it non-motorized. I think there's a couple things we're getting off on weeds here, okay? If you look at the topic, we're talking about the Red Drive trailhead. That's what we're really worried about right now. Red Drive itself is a mess. If the proposal came to us to invest money to rebuild Red Drive, it would probably become non-motorized. We're not going to abandon Red Drive. It's our easement. We own it. We need that. We plan on extending utilities through there. As it's been made public, we're taking that over as a water district soon from the city, probably around August. And we'll want to be able to extend water mains and that through that area, but it doesn't need to be a motorized road. That's the difference. We could make a nice parking area in a non-motorized trail that people can walk to the barns. We're not going to abandon that access, but the right decision might be not to make it motorized anymore, because the amount of money it's going to take to improve that road, to tear it out, rebuild it, if Eagle even let you, because of the wetland in there, it's not money well spent. Okay, so you're right about the Greenspire's problem. It's not our problem. I can name 2 or 3 other schools, one right behind Meyer that's got a serious problem that we're dealing with, you know, dropping off kids on one side of the street and running across the road because they don't want to wait in line. So there's a lot of issues like that, but they become our issues because they're in our township. But you know, Red Drive Trailhead is a big project for us. We're gonna have a nice trail going in there soon, and we don't have a trailhead that, you know, that is equal to how nice the trail is going to be. You know, so without I think getting off in the weeds on Red Drive is the wrong direction for this group of people, because that's probably a township decision that's going to be made without any input from the planning commission, quite frankly. So if it comes to that. So,
Well, but there would be input from the Parks Commission, wouldn't there?
Possibly, but if it comes down to spending the money, then it's probably not going to be money well spent.
And with regard to the fact that you know, there are wetlands all around there, Silver Drive is constructed through quite the similar wetlands, and it I don't know how many years it's been intact, but it certainly is a solid, well-engineered improvement, and the same could be achieved. Again, for connecting I'm just looking at it in terms of connecting our park and providing access. And one of my thoughts is that a lot of folks from our township who would seek to access that parking lot to access the park, they're going to be coming off of Silver Lake Road. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned that to access that park, to take the circuitous route all the way around the north side of the Northwest Ed might deter them from using that access point, because it becomes a longer route to get to. I don't know. Maybe they would want to get there anyways. But I don't know. I'm reluctant to. I'd like to see more study and more analysis of maintaining that connection. And would just further point out that with regards to the wetlands issues, if you we have an existing road footprint there. So in terms of permitting with Eagle to maintain that, it's a much lower bar than allowing it to lapse. And when I say lapse, If we construct a water main through there and then don't restore a road or allow that to get reduced to the width of a non-motorized type access, because it's less expensive for us to construct and restore, then we risk having that become a narrower road opportunity or access way, and then you come back in 10 years and the wetlands have encroached on that area, it's less width, and then you're looking at a bigger cost to turn it back into a road or maintain a road if you decide down the road, pun intended, I guess, that connectivity is valuable. So it's really complicated, I think, and we should certainly
But I think that the thing is
continue
here is
to
we're
look at
not
it.
talking about Red Drive. We're talking about the trailhead.
The trailhead is what we're
So
really
that
concerned
would be a separate discussion in itself.
But Red Drive is the trailhead, and the only piece we're talking about is, does that trailhead parking lot, do we maintain connectivity with Red Drive in the barns, or do we abandon that connectivity? And that, I think it's all interrelated.
Well, it defined connectivity. It's connectivity with a car, or connectivity walking, or on a bike. Okay, because we're not going to give up that connectivity. There will be connectivity, but whether we allow it to be motorized or non-motorized, because the motorized connection right now, if you're parking there anyway, yeah, it might take you a little longer to get around, silver, blue, green, however to get there. You get there, you're still walking there anyway. Okay, there's is probably almost as much desire to keep it motorized as to make it non-motorized. Molly pointed out a couple areas where right now we have the Barnes Park area being divided by a road. Okay, if you made it non-motorized, now it's not being divided by a road, it's being divided by a walking trail or a non-motorized trail. So those areas become more usable. So probably as many people as you could line up advocating for it to be maintained as motorized, you get to find just as many that say, let's make it non-motorized. But ultimately, we want to make the trail accessible, the trailhead, something worthy of the trail we're putting in. And that's really the topic on the agenda tonight. John?
I think that is a direct question, and I actually have just a question rather than a comment about it. What is the plan for parking at that trailhead? If there's already people using the place, and they typically park on what I always thought was North Ed property, but I guess it's owned by the township. Is that the plan going forward, or is there how many spaces and where are we planning to put all these additional users that we expect to come and take advantage of this beautiful new trail?
That's the question in front of us. And John or Steve, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Can I ask one quick question? So as a former Greenspire parent who has driven down Red Drive many, many years in the past, and it has never, and has also listened to the road commission talk about how difficult it would ever be to make that a well-maintained road. I'd agree with Molly that it just kind of ends there. I do think we need to provide good parking for that park. But I've also heard talk of a purple drive. John, could you outline what that might be on that map with your pointer?
Yeah, I'll do that. I think at this point, the right approach in this is we're not going to obviously solve this tonight, but I think in discussions about all the different stakeholders in that area, you can look at different scenarios, evaluate those scenarios, and present those out, and so you can see what's the cost and so forth. But yeah, the concept of Purple Drive would be a connection from Red Drive over to Silver. It would be there is some topo change here, so Red Drive is higher than this parking lot down here. But there's also the ability to connect to the non-motorized trail that is within the city that could connect over here. This trail ultimately leads you to Boardman Lake Loop. So I think those are the types of scenarios that could be evaluated. I think what we're just kind of looking for at this point is just to make you aware of it, and that we need to definitely have discussions with Northwest Ed, particularly. I think what Chris was brought up is that they have plans, or at least they're evaluating plans to do some expansion, and we're thinking and we're looking at having some improvements to Red Drive Trailhead. This is a great opportunity for us to communicate with those stakeholders, and maybe we can come at and look at some different scenarios on providing appropriate solutions to this area.
Can I add and segue to the next?
Go ahead.
Are we good with most of this topic? Because my thing was going to segue into the last topic.
Yeah, we can, I think that, to answer John's question though about the parking,
Yeah.
we have, a majority of that parking lot that's always been assumed belonged to North Ed belongs to us. So that's a key component of improving that parking lot. That's where the additional parking will come for the trailhead. But the actual trailhead will be on the what would be the west side of Red Drive, or above that parking lot.
The trailhead is listed in the capital improvement program. It is actually listed for this year. The trail itself might end up happening first, and it's engineered to get down to the level of the parking lot, but more of a robust trailhead design might end up being further, especially because of knowing that most of it is currently understood or used as Northwest Ed's parking, so it might take some negotiation to figure out the long-term solution to that. But that is in the CIP. So.
Yes, for this year, isn't it?
It is technically this year. Because of that, it might get bumped, but we'll take a look as we go. So.
The DNR grant came through, correct?
DNR did. They reviewed and approved the plan specs and bid documents. That actually was yesterday. So they will be going out for bid. Thank you, Jennifer, for all of your work in getting those prepared. So very exciting that the trail is back on track.
Is this going to be a majority of that's ADA accessible, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's going to be it's going to be a beautiful trail. It's going to be a nice addition up there.
So would it be appropriate to put on the Parks Commission's agenda in the near future some consideration of what some recommendations would be in terms of the parking lot for Red Drive, so that we are kind of on the record as a Parks Commission, send some recommendations to the trustees for their consideration, but we kind of get something on the record so that as this project develops that you're indicating, Chris, with Northwest Ed, we're not necessarily responding to them with, oh, there's an opportunity to look at a parking lot for our park, but we've already established some criteria for what we're looking for. Does that make sense to the trustees? Okay.
That's fine.
And speaking of kind of that non-motorized connectivity in that area too, I won't get into the details of Purple Drive because that has a history to it, but where that connects from a non-motorized perspective would be the end of that trail loop that we just got the DNR approval for to a point. You can actually see it on the last map if you want to go back one slide just to kind of point that out. Yeah.
This connection.
That connection, that point at the end of that parking lot with the power plant in it there's a trail that goes into the city on the old railroad, and then going to the south is Buffalo Ridge Trail. So that could be a very big kind of hub of non-motorized connection of 3 major trails, which leads us into potential trail improvements.
So earlier, the Township did use some ARPA funds to improve and create a trail along the north side of South Airport Road and up a portion of Barlow. And we do have a non-motorized plan in the master plan, but it's really kind of looking at all the different areas throughout the township. A lot of it's predicated on development that are contributing to the construction of those trails. We've been trying to focus on creating some priorities for future trails that the township might be involved in. We have others that are coming to us and telling us they'd like a trail over here or over there. And we're trying to narrow down some priorities because there's a lot of opportunities for trails, but we want to focus on those that have the biggest impact, that really are needed within our community. So we've identified, at least this is just a sketch right now at this point, of identifying some segments that we feel need to be gaps that need to be filled. When we were going through the master plan process, we did have a planning process that was used by some students that had created some criteria that identified places where people want to go, so not just for, places for shopping, places for work. It could be for recreation. We also wanted to be in those places where we had higher density areas where people are living. So the areas in yellow are the ones that we are finding as the segments that we would like to focus on initially as priorities. These are, in many cases, for instance, this is a segment on, this is South Airport Road from Logan's Landing going towards the east. There's a segment there that now we could get Cherryland Center connected to Barlow. There's areas along Garfield Avenue, Barlow, etc. There's some areas over on South Airport near US 31. And then longer term, we would be looking at these gray areas. These are the areas that we think are important to impacting the people that are needing most in terms of some non-motorized connections within our community.
Yeah, Carol.
Super excited about the Lafreniere Road piece of that. There's a little bit that's come with the development over there on the southern end of it. Excited to see how you guys overcome the topography there, but I think that would be huge for connectivity for those of us living on the southeast side of the township. I wish there was a way to overcome the topography on South Airport between Cass and Veterans. I see a ton of people that even in the winter are needing to get around that way if they don't have vehicles, and there's really not a lot of safe alternatives to that. I don't know, I haven't even thought about how that could be accomplished, but I guess in my mind that's a little bit of a priority just because I see so many people needing to use it and it just being inherently unsafe the way it is. I don't know what other folks think.
Yeah, I see the same thing.
That along with the third one is this same elevation issues would be South Airport up to Zimmerman Road is another connection that would be desirable, but with the hill there, I don't know how you do it. It's a lot of work.
Like the Lafreniere one too, because that hill.
Maybe a ski lift or something.
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, it's dangerous right now because people are walking in the road. And you have to watch. I mean, there was a 3-car accident because of somebody trying to miss hitting a person. That's dangerous area there too, so. But you can't do anything with it.
And they plow onto the
Sidewalk, the existing sidewalk area, they plow onto it so they can't walk.
It's too close.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand that these aren't necessarily projects unto just the township itself, but we see these opportunities that we would partner with others. But these are, well, we felt like these are the ones that would be most important and should we be evaluating and looking at new trails in the future. Because I think there's a lot of pull from others to kind of get us into looking at some other directions, and I think these are the ones that we evaluate based on the data and the criteria that we've developed that are going to be most impactful to people in our community.
Kind of partnering with, especially the road commission would be key on those 2 corridors that were just mentioned, South Airport and Lafreniere, since even the sidewalks are, they're essentially, some of those, I know the South Airport one is almost technically just considered a paved shoulder. So like when snow gets shoveled onto it, it's like that's entirely what they intended to do with that. But working with them, I think Chris and Joe, you both have talked with the road commission on the Frankie Road as that's happened. So I think that's been really good to see that there's an opening from road commission to partner with the township and actually do that sidewalk on that road. So hopefully that opens up possibilities for doing more of that in the future. Yep.
Yeah, and it's one that Steve just mentioned. It's not on, I don't know if it's noted on there or not, but we're in the final design stages and on adding a small segment, but an important segment of sidewalk trail, call it, between the Montessori School and basically right along Frankie Road there. There's not a sidewalk along that stretch. And with the rebuild of Frankie Road this year by the Planning Commission, we're able to coordinate with them. And so not quite to the Great Wolf Lodge, but there's a trail that comes up to that school bus entrance on the south side of and Montessori School, and those two trails end. And we think we're real close to getting that connected this year. So that'll be a big boost to that whole area for the students and the residents in that area. So we're close on that one.
I just want to mention real quick too that the Parks Master Plan, non-motorized, also has the trail, like the supervisor said, going up Silver Lake to Zimmerman and to our park on East Silver, connecting Wyatt to the high school, in some areas on Cass Road too. But like John had mentioned, it's our thought that these are the highest priorities.
And then any projects that do involve the township, like John said, any of these would be involve some different partners, different stakeholders. Anything that involves the township. As of last year, we adopted the capital improvements program. So as that gets updated every year, we can scope out projects for programming into different years of the CIP. CIP committee can review that as we create those out of what are the potential priorities. This was based off of things that are in the non-motorized plan, in the Parks and Rec plan. So I think that it would make sense that CIP committee would probably be the next to look at if anything is scoped out as a potential project.
Comments on the trails? It's nice. I mean, year by year, bit by bit, this trail system just keeps getting more complete and more complete. It's been it was a vision that was hard to see maybe 10 years ago. It's be easier to see now, and it's getting more. Every little bit helps. So it's good to see. All right. If there's no more questions or comments on trails, we'll move on. Next item on our agenda after new business is our second public comment. Second opportunity to come up and comment. Please, if you're going to comment again for a second time, please make it on a new topic, preferably. If you've already commented on something, we prefer not to rehash that.
Do you mind if I talk on the same topic but just from a different angle? It might help because it was quite relevant, everything that I was hearing from this conversation tonight. So Dr. Mitch Disson again here. Again, thank you guys for talking about this in advance. This is proactive conservancy. So I know that you think that you guys are okay right now, but we do have a project here where we looked at communities that could potentially be impacted by data centers. And of course, 318 Michigan communities, Garfield Township was one of them. And one of the reasons for that is that because of its proximity to 310 kilovolts and higher high voltage transmission infrastructure. So you guys do have the capabilities that that developers are specifically looking for. And of course, being on the outskirts, I don't know if you can call this the suburbs of Traverse City. In Grand Rapids, there's 6 data centers that have been going in for the last few years. So this is precisely the kinds of areas that they like to look at. And maybe if they haven't contacted you, they probably have you somewhere on their boards. So just keep that in mind. And everything that you were talking about before, anything you know about local governance or planning, just throw it out the window because it doesn't work with data centers. Everything we've seen, they skirt through. Eagle is rubber stamping every single one of these things. They're bypassing every single administrative process. There's literally just an article that came out in Planet Detroit how the state allowed saline data center construction before final air quality permit removal. This is quite typical that you're not going through the traditional EGLE processes or water processes or air quality processes as you really would for anything else. So, of course, there is a big difference between the data centers you guys had before when you first put this in, the relatively cute data centers that you definitely do need for hospital or even educational institutions, but these AI data centers, but it's not just an AI data center. The crypto mining data center in Sault Ste. Marie has caused massive issues. So also too, moving it to a special use permit might help. It's a little bit better. Of course, try to get rid of the use by right as quickly as possible. But I was texting my lawyer friend here who's working on this in Hayes. She said that it's still a prescription for how to permit a data center, but the best way to stop it is usually by limiting the amount of decibels, noise pollution, air pollution, light pollution. So just think of that when you're constructing something. And usually sometimes when you do construct a moratorium, it can be a linchpin to allow people in too. So there is a specific way to do it. And John, to your point, we do this for free. So I'm happy to put you guys in contact with anybody that you guys want to talk to more about this. So lawyers, township planners. Again, I'm not a township planner, so I apologize that my language isn't so professional for that. But yeah, feel free to reach out at my email, and we'll help you guys in any way possible. So thank you.
Hi there. I'm Nicole Gerard, and I live at 2973 Concord Street. I am a Traverse City native and a resident of Garfield Township for over 20 years, and I appreciate the care and concern that this board is showing, and the township staff as well are exhibiting. So thank you all for working to get out in front of the issue of data centers in our area. I would like to urge the Township Board and Planning Commission to take all possible effort to narrow our zoning ordinances and to constrain any data centers that approach Garfield Township to the tightest and most stringent standards for consideration. When reviewing what other communities have experienced when data centers were built, the negatives seem to strongly outweigh any positives. And in a location like Traverse City, which is known for our natural beauty and our abundance of fresh, clean water, we should all do our best to protect this area and the quality of life for the citizens here, as well as the affordability of our energy and water costs and capacity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Heather. I'm actually a Kalkaska resident. I spend a lot of time in Traverse City. I shop here and I shower here. I live off-grid in a very pristine location that was just 2 miles away from the proposed 1,400-acre data center that was on public land. And it was really kind of, it was scary because it was so fast. The company, Rock Locker, was approached by a data center spokesperson and then proposed this huge data center that was going to be the biggest in the entire country. And it was already gone through before any public comment could be done. And Matt admitted that only a handful of people knew about the project and about the benefits of the project before the public got a chance to say something. And the public was overwhelmingly against it. And Matt also was very persistent, and we're worried that a private land deal is going to be an issue. So I would encourage you to get ahead of this and definitely understand that these people are being lied to. So even if you're talking to experts, they're getting lied to. Matt didn't know anything about data centers, and he was trying to bring us a community benefits proposal. And we caught him in lies. He had said that he wasn't going to use fresh water, but he was going to pull from the aquifer, which is our water too. And I confronted him about the emissions from the natural gas power plant that was going to be built just for that particular purpose. And he said that it was a closed loop system and that the entire system was going to be contained and it was going to be zero emissions. And then at the next meeting, after both of us, him and I, did our research, I'm not an expert on data centers either, we found out that it actually will still give off a lot of emissions, a lot of pollution, and it's not safe even in a closed loop system. And at the second meeting, he was saying low emissions, not zero emissions, like he said in the first meeting. So you really have to be careful. They don't know what they're talking about. And I heard you guys saying that you want to talk to experts, I think that's really great. But just know, see where the experts are getting paid from. And the real experts now are people on the ground. I did not want to be a data center expert. No way did I want to be an activist for this particular issue, but here we are. I would encourage you to talk to the experts who are the people
Thank you.
next to.
Thank you for your time, questions,
People next
comments.
to.
Thank you very much. Something new?
Hi again. Yes. No, I just wanted to encourage you. Yeah, moratorium on the data centers, that's a great idea. And you did ask, like, do we ask about greenhouse gas emissions or electricity or water use for other special use permits? And no, you don't, but you should, right? And maybe let this moment of the boogeyman data center, which is real, but also let that reform the way you think about all special use permits, right? Always ask about emissions, always ask about electricity use. And you can set standards. Those standards exist in special programs like Living Building Challenge or Well Building Standard, right? These are beyond LEED. They exist. You don't have to be an expert. You can just steal them, right? And those would prohibit data centers if you use them appropriately. And also think too about emissions. Data centers are bad, but what has a bigger global emissions impact than data centers? Concrete, right? So I'm mad about the data centers, but I'm mad about all the concrete you guys are using, right? So give Red Drive back to the swamp. I'm stoked about the Frankie Road redo because I can't walk from Buffalo Ridge to the Mall Trail without some kind of harrowing road crossing of 37, right? And it's absurd, right? Because on Frankie Road, when you're coming south, there's a curb cut on one side of that road, and then there's not a curb cut on the other side of that road. So there are just really small, simple things that I think you guys can do. I'm just really appreciative of everything you've talked about. And I know John will do the right thing. I know you all do the right thing. So, yeah. But I think we can limit into these data centers for sure. And I just want to say I appreciate you. Lots of good conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. No one's moving forward. We will close second public comment. Bring it back to the board. Just want to state to the Planning Commission, thank you for your service. We only get together once a year. The job that the Planning Commission does is a very important role, the future and development of the township. You're our advisor, you're our eyes and ears, and our studies, the people that do all the hard work and bring it to us. So I do very much appreciate your service on the Planning Commission. So
Yes, thank you.
So, if there's nothing else come before the boards, we're adjourned.
I needed to thank you.